right, thank you, Victoria. Let's see, you want to be able to give me control here? Thank you. As we introduce ourselves to the audience here, we'd also like the audience to introduce yourselves to us a little bit. We're not going to go around and ask everyone to go by name. I think we would take the entire meeting time if we do that. But a poll should pop up here for allowing us to get a sense for what types of agencies and organizations you belong to, so we get a sense for who we're talking to, make sure we tailor our messaging a little bit there. So please take advantage of the poll and reply to this. I'm Adrian Piermine with STD. I'm the leading up our Western States practice for emerging technology. I've been in the industry getting ever closer to 30 years now of doing planning, design, and implementation, starting for many of those years in intelligent transportation and telecommunication systems, and spending much of the last decade evolving even more into connected autonomous vehicles and new emerging specific technologies like next generation transit signal priority that we'll be highlighting today as a use case. And I'm going to ask Erin to go ahead and introduce herself next. You're on mute, Erin.
I'm Erin Ellinger. My firm is Smart City Traffic LLC. I have more than 40 years in ITS, having started at the Washington State Department of Transportation. I'm currently focused on the urban environment and how we move traffic and support it using new technologies, and provide systems engineering and program management services to my clients.
Thank you, Erin. Victoria, do we have enough response yet to go ahead and show the results of that first poll so we can kind of ask question number 2? Okay, yeah, this is really helpful for us to take a quick look here. Looks like a good percentage of folks are consultants and private sector, as well as public sector traffic planning operations, a small percentage of public transportation, transit folks. So good cross representation. Thanks everybody for answering that. Can you bring up the second poll so we start to understand your familiarity with the topic of digital infrastructure that we're going to be talking about today? We'll give you a chance to respond to this while Miles introduces himself.
Hello, I'm Miles Crumley. I'm the Interim Director of Operations Analysis and Essential Data at TriMet. We're responsible for key performance indicators and metrics performance for the operation at the agency. I've started out as a bus operator, and I've been working at TriMet for about 10 years.
Great, thanks, Miles. Tim, last but definitely not least in our presentation today.
Thanks, Adrian. Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Menard, and I am the CEO and founder of Light, which will be 8 years old next month. I've been in the intelligent transportation system space since 2009, and I got my start more on the automotive side of connected vehicles at Toyota and Tesla. So happy to be here today and talk about digital infrastructure. Adrian?
Great, thanks, Tim. Okay, so we'll take a look at the results of our second poll here and talk about our audience's familiarity. Okay, so again, this is a pretty good curve diagram here of 20%, just around 20% not familiar at all with digital infrastructure, 51% of folks with some familiarity, and then 30 pretty well versed or work in this on a regular basis. So I will spend a little bit of time setting the table a little bit about the definition, and we'll come back to a revised version of that poll at the end, kind of the end of class quiz where you don't actually have to answer any questions, just to let us know whether you learned anything today. So let's see what our third poll question was. Yeah, so we're going to similarly want to explore the technology that Tim and I are going to go into a bit more detail about, and Miles is going to be talking about what the results have been. So Tim and I will talk about how TriMet and agencies are doing it, Miles will be talking about why they're doing it and what we're seeing so far. And Aaron will be wearing the hat of our traffic signal partners, of which we saw many represented in today's session on what they're seeing and dealing with here. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. And we'll take a look at the results of that in just a second. Oh yeah, I've got control here, sorry. So definition of roadway digital infrastructure. This is a very large topic, very hot topic in our industry right now, but it means an awful lot of things. And you could probably interview 50 people in the industry and get 50 different definitions of digital infrastructure. Kind of like the smart cities or the Internet of Things. So we're going to do a couple things. One, we'll define it using some of the terms and definitions that Federal Highways is using, as they have a parallel effort in roadway digital infrastructure definition and helping understand and then share what Federal Highways' role is in this space. This whole 7-part series, and again, Victoria mentioned this at the beginning, this is part 3 of a 7-part series. We're trying to unpack digital infrastructure in a couple different ways. One is some of these sessions are focused more on subsystems. Last month, there was focused more around data and what data and data sharing means in roadway digital infrastructure. In some of these other sessions, we're focusing more on use cases. And so today we'll be talking about next generation transit signal priority, emergency preemption, signal integration, and getting down into that use case to help everyone kind of, again, unpack, define, understand roadway digital infrastructure. One of our clients, Federal Highways, John Corbin, has given me access to these slides from his project, where Federal Highways is defining roadway digital infrastructure as collective public and private technology assets that create, exchange, or use data and information to improve the transportation system by provision of existing and new services for travelers, businesses, and agencies. So pretty broad definition right there. But the key point here is that RDI is not just data. Data is critical. Data is one of the underlying elements of all this, but it's the infrastructure, as the name implies, the roadway infrastructure, the network infrastructure, the back office infrastructure, and the exchange between agencies that are all covered under this subject. Let's take a look at where we're going. It's always helpful to take a look at where we've been. I'll try to thumb through these pretty quickly. Starting just with 20th century vision for intelligent transportation system. It was nice when we had built out these freeways and there was a lot of separation between cars and everything was moving smoothly and we could just observe what was going on our transportation networks. But pretty quickly, as we built that network out, we induced the demand, and then we had to start getting into actively managing the traffic flow. And so these images are kind of quaint and historic, but you'll see that we've been building traffic management centers for decades now. This is an old version of that, but we're still continuing to invest pretty heavily in how we actively manage these roadway systems now. Late in the 20th century, we started to explore how do we get that data that we're collecting on our roadways and share it out with the driving public. So we started with some early concepts around that. And at the same time, we started looking at highway automation. And this is where Federal Highways really understood the need for playing a role in defining the digital roadway infrastructure, was when they started looking at highway automation. And again, late in the 20th century, we were looking at very heavy infrastructure, government-owned infrastructure installed along our roadways, talking to cars to automate them. Then all of a sudden we had a major technology leap. And luckily, the automotive manufacturing industry, the research and development industry, and the telecommunications industry were not waiting for US DOT or other government agencies to tell them how to do these things. But we've had this massive technology leap where highway automation, vehicle automation started to get flipped on its ear, where what if the cars actually had all the sensors they needed to be able to drive themselves? And so instead of requiring government data and government infrastructure to talk to them, can they become self-automated driving units? And so the Defense DARPA award program started to demonstrate that a few years back, and a lot of research and development has gone on into automation since then. At the same time that was going on in the telecommunications industry, we had a pretty major leap as the cell providers started to put real-time data right literally into our fingertips and allow it also to be delivered to applications, potentially into our vehicles themselves. So these parallel efforts that were happening outside of what was being driven by government have really changed the paradigm of what roadway digital infrastructure looks like. So again, these are John Corbin's slides that the project has used. This was from a kickoff meeting at TRB, where we're really starting to broadly reach out to industry to engage in this conversation. What's the difference now then between 20th century and ITS and the 21st century in roadway digital infrastructure? A lot of content in here. These slides and the recording will be available to everyone, since I'm not able to go through bullet by bullet and talk about this, but we've seen a couple fundamental shifts. One is in who owns and operates the infrastructure. Is it all government that is procuring it in traditional government procurement models, buying infrastructure, putting it on the side of the road? Or are we migrating over to more public-private partnerships, where a lot of that infrastructure, the data itself, and the applications are being developed by private sector partners? How has the policy context of this changed when we were looking at safety, mobility, congestion, environmentally friendly topics around what we need to be doing in transportation? We've gone from just having policy statements that were trying to impact driver decisions to policy impacts around the technology to enable safe streets, user-oriented accessibility, community connectivity, and this last bullet on the bottom right, nationally synchronized and market-driven. Those 2 points within that are, again, Federal Highways feels that they have a significant role in making sure that as this rolls out, it's synchronized across the country, that we don't have one system being built in one state and you have to download a different app when you cross the state border. It has to be synchronized. And market-driven means there has to be business incentive for our private sector partners to be building the infrastructure that we're going to be relying on here. So the roles are changing drastically. Those of us that have, another quick definition, and this kind of comes back to the question of, well, is roadway digital infrastructure just another term or redefinition of intelligent transportation systems? Daniel Bremer, Chief Innovation Officer, now leading up the Cooperative Automated Transportation Program at Washington DOT, had this kind of cute math equation where RDI is not just ITS, but also not abandoning ITS. It's taking that ITS infrastructure that we've been investing in as states. It's bringing in the data that is coming from those systems, but also the data that's coming from our private sector partners and the vast availability of data that's available then. And you can question the math here to the power of 10, but the point that she's making with that is that it's that complex interplay of these partnerships between public and private that make the RDI equation a challenge to solve, and why we need all of the stakeholders that are attending these different sessions to be part of the discussion, help us solve this challenge. US DOT, Federal Highways, not doing this by themselves, partnering with ITS America, who has their own definition for digital infrastructure, working together with other departments that are each trying to define their element of roadway digital infrastructure in a complementary manner. So we're not duplicating duties, but every department taking the piece that they have the most input into. Last little section here before I transition into into the actual use case we're focusing on, those of us that have been around ITS long enough remember the old sausage diagram and hamburger diagrams from the ITS architecture umpteen years ago. Well, we're reinventing the hamburger here to a certain degree. The bottom bun, the foundational pieces of roadway digital infrastructure, public policy context. Here we get into cybersecurity, privacy, equity, those issues, architecture and data principles. Let's build off of the ITS architecture, collaborative strategic research. How do we do research in an ever-changing environment like this? Business models, we talked about a little bit. It has to make sense for private sector, and the tremendous issues that we're all going to be dealing with on workforce development are all the foundational pieces. In the middle of our sandwich here is the what we call the on-ramps and the capabilities. These two levels and the applications are the meat of the sandwich here. This is the how we're going to deliver roadway digital infrastructure. And over the top of all of this are the use cases and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So this is why roadway digital infrastructure is so important. And so when we get into these webinars that we're doing right now, we're now about to take more of a laser focus into one of those use cases to see how it trickles down through the rest of this. So here's where we transition to TriMet, Portland market, and what we're seeing in a lot of other transit agencies across the country, and that's the transition from a first generation transit signal system where buses were using Opticom, literally infrared or light strobes, talking to the infrastructure. Again, here we go, infrastructure on the bus, talking to infrastructure at the cabinet, the traffic signal cabinet, then making decisions on, am I able to get this bus a green signal and get through the intersection? The second generation of that, which we're trying to illustrate on the right-hand side, is that same concept, still heavy infrastructure focused, but with local radios instead of Opticom emitters. These technologies were intensive, labor intensive to install and maintain because so much equipment's going out on the edge. Hardware heavy when it comes to infrastructure being installed on all of the buses, being installed at all of the intersections. And you can see the operational challenges. Living out here in Portland, Oregon, we have 4 distinct weather seasons and a lot of different conditions and systems that rely on line of sight, and even radio communications in direct format like that can be heavily impacted by those first generation solutions. So TriMet went through an architecture assessment and developed an RFP to replace that first generation transit signal system and the infrastructure heavy approach with a cloud-based, cellular-based architecture. So this replaces the edge infrastructure needed at the cabinet. It makes use of existing technology that's already on the bus and does not require a new device to be installed there. The buses then can communicate into a cloud solution, and which then communicates on out to the traffic signals. These last couple images and the next one, I was at DKS Associates at the time, the consultant project manager leading this. These were vendor agnostic at that point in time. We were developing an RFP to help TriMet procure this architecture. And the last piece of it starts to show kind of the logical data flow then from those buses into the cloud, the buses identifying where they are, and some other data that's required by the cloud solution to make determinations of what level of priority. And I won't get into too much more technical detail because I'm going to hand the mic over to Tim to talk about how Light's solution, who TriMet selected, actually delivers on this promise. But then the data gets pushed out into the field, telling the controllers an estimated time of arrival well in advance of when the bus is going to be there. And then the signals need to be programmed to receive that and more proactively manage the signal phase and timing to do a better job of green wave for bus arrival. Our project that was this was first delivered on was the Division Transit Project. Miles is going to be talking from the TriMet perspective about how this has gone, what they've seen in the first year of operations. Wanted to show kind of physically what this looks like. We've got these new articulated extended buses dealing with all kinds of different issues with bike traffic and pedestrians and a number of complex issues out there. But it's up and running, and we're, as you'll see in a few minutes, pretty happy about some of the results. So I'm going to hand this over to Tim. I'm going to start taking a look at the questions that are coming in. I'm largely going to be holding off until we get into the Q&A section, unless one of the questions we really want to answer it because it's helping with the flow of that part of the conversation. But with that, Tim, why don't you take over?
Thanks, Adrian. And with that, excellent. There we go. And with that, I'm here going to start out with just a quick background on who is Light. And as you can see here in the photo, we're a team of highly passionate folks here that really enjoy what we do and are really about making our communities better, working with transit, working with our first responders. And ultimately, we're a really diverse team made up of automotive engineers, traffic engineers, and what I like to call technologists, which is those who have specialized in cloud and big data and artificial intelligence. And all this has come together to be able to offer what we like to jokingly say the Lightspeed platform, because we really want communities to travel at light speed, is a connected vehicle as a platform. Combined, we've got several decades of lessons learned from automotive engineering, traffic engineering, having some of the team actually been a part of Toyota's connected vehicle team, where we did a lot of stuff on DSRC and the evolution of CV2X. So I'm really excited to be sharing with you all today what we've been able to do with other communities with these lessons learned. So to get started on the components of what digital infrastructure is, and the first and foremost is, it's been tossed around for a very long time, which is the cloud. And we're not talking about the white puffy stuff up in the sky. We're really talking about remote servers that are highly accessible. So thanks to the last several years, huge investments in connectivity and offsite computation, the cloud has become kind of the tech industry as a whole solution to gluing everybody together. And it's phenomenal what we're able to do. And we all use this type of architecture every day when we use our cell phones to access information from any of the software apps on that phone. So we all are living in this very highly connected, powerful world. And so how this is really helpful to transportation is that this is making access to vehicle data easier and more accessible than ever before. And there are a number of examples out there of what this information is or where it's coming from. But a lot of the users on this call are really looking at the bottom line of just, can we get telemetry data? Can we find out where vehicles are? Can we find out where they're going? And can we use that to better manage our roads today? So now we just talked about that there is this big bank of data and we can throw a lot of computation at it. Well, that computation has manifested into artificial intelligence having another renaissance. And we've been seeing over the last few years on how machine learning and big data and how being able to put all this into a blender is now pouring out into really excellent results. And so here, the rest of my conversation on here is going to be talking about how big data going into machine learning and that big data actually being vehicle data and vehicle insights is turning into nice compartmentalized traffic management solutions, primarily talking about for EMS and transit folks for today. So just to reiterate, we're talking about how we're going from a very hardware centric world into a more software driven and connected. And one of the things just to remember from this slide is that the change now is going from the intersection being the source of truth and the ultimate place of detection into now, how do we connect our traffic lights to the much larger worlds that they can all work and play together? And that's a huge paradigm switch. And so I'm going to be talking about with digital infrastructure, changing the point of view now from at intersection to comprehensive bird's eye view. And we're going to see pictures of that as we move forward. And the reason being with that is because amongst a lot of things that Adrian has already covered, ultimately at the end of the day, the best way to set up our traffic management systems or traffic technology is with how well we can get access to data. So everybody here, I hope, has participated in some sort of traffic study before, and you know that the results of your study is only as good as the information you get. So here we're really going to be talking again about how do we just access more information that allows us to achieve the results we want to see and jump bars we've never thought were possible before. So a little plug for Light here, which is that being this platform, we've been able to demonstrate very credible vehicle connected apps for emergency responders, thus emergency vehicle preemption, transit signal priority, actually making moves to turn transit signal priority into a more aggressive solution for emergency vehicle responders, taking this to other municipal vehicles like snowplows, and then this all crescendos up to, since there's all this data and we get it in real time, now making it extremely easy to access what happened today, what happened yesterday, and what happened a year ago. So that again, every traffic project takes a lot of time to put together, but because everything is coming together, we should be able to turn very quickly now on, are we achieving goals together that we want to see? So with that, as I kind of already talked over the light difference, and just again, why should you walk out of this conversation today with really caring about digital infrastructure? And because ultimately it's going to be the public sector's best competitive edge to being able to bring scalable, cost-effective, budget-friendly solutions. I'll leave everybody with this thought experiment today and challenge, which is we're at the first time in society where we're not able to build anything new from scratch. We already have a lot, and we have to think about how to use that better. And digital infrastructure is our way to think about how we use that better. Because today we're talking about buses and EMS, things we've always been working with for decades. But there's already been challenges for how drones and autonomous vehicles now run with this. And so this is setting up the foundation for a future where machines with humans now work together. So with that, understanding that we already have a lot of infrastructure out there, our vehicle providers, whether that be our transit folks, our EMS folks, our automotive, GM, Tesla, Toyota, you could even plug in their navigation. There's a whole bunch of information in this world that's accessible through the cloud. The second major component here is how we tie that all together, and then working with our public sector. And how do we wind up getting street side insights into the cloud right there? And so for those of you who are familiar with connected vehicles, roadside units, you could think here of our, what's represented in this block diagram here is Light Maestro, as a virtual roadside unit, which is actually using pre-existing communication networks in the agency side to communicate directly with the traffic controllers. And that could be fiber, it could be twisted pair, it could be Ethernet, could be radio, could be cellular. As long as there's connectivity, this is able to communicate, secure that exchange, and then get those insights to the cloud and vice versa, so that you can have one point talk to everything on the road. And that's huge. And that's where the cost-effective, budget-friendly, highly scalable part of this conversation comes into play. So there's a number of agencies that have gone in and have deployed or are bringing this up right now. As you can see here, most notably, we're going to be looking at examples today from some of the largest West Coast cities. That's going to be City of Seattle, City of Portland, City of San Jose, where just in last year, where we had full year's data for 3 different bus routes, that's going to be what we've been talking about today with TriMet, plus 3 in the City of San Jose. It's phenomenal how much carbon emission, fuel savings has come out of just prioritizing and optimizing 30 miles of roadway. So, you know, $600,000 for 3 bus routes and just fuel savings, which is equated to just over 1,000 metric tons in greenhouse emissions in some areas that are actually communities of impact is a huge investment takeaway in our communities. And so we're not going to play this video today, but if you like, you can go onto YouTube, you can go straight to our website, look up the City of Seattle, and you can see firsthand how this system works in action for emergency responders and emergency vehicle preemption. And then there's also 2 additional videos out there, so you can hear directly from the City of San Jose and the ITS director at TriMet on all the successes, again, that you're seeing here, so that everybody can leave today with even more information on why others are seeing value in this type of architecture. So let's dive right into emergency services first, and why they're seeing this type of benefit here is because, as you're seeing here in this monitor, which really incredible is now we're in this one window system where traffic insights, vehicle insights are now available in one window remotely and live. We could actually bring up and we could watch these cities that have this and see where's emergency response, where is it going, how are lights changing, and how well is it doing. And that's been a huge game changer to taking projects that would take years and deployment time and bringing it down to weeks. And depending how large projects, sometimes months. And this is a game changer. And the reason why they're having such major success once it's deployed is because there's more information now to drive the decision on when to preempt and why. So as Adrian stated earlier, where we had for a fire truck, flashing lights was the detection by the traffic light to make a change. That's a small view, and especially in ultra urban environments where you might be completely obstructed, it might not be enough time to make a change. But now working with 911 operation dispatch centers, now being able to use advanced algorithms for vehicle tracking and mapping back to roads, a lot of these things that 10 years ago were really challenging have resolved themselves out. And so by combining this information, Light's been able to take emergency vehicle preemption and turn it into a needs-based system where only when there's an emergency that has been dispatched to a specific vehicle, can that vehicle be authorized for preemption. And now that's great news for all of our traffic partners that are on this call today, because what that means is you now have the power to give responders the green lights they need for the response time that they need it, but now they can't also wreck their coordination when they're going to lunch. And these are the horse trading that we have to do in this industry all the time, because it's a teamwork industry. And everybody's fighting for that same green time. And that's one of the biggest benefits. And we see a screenshot right here from Seattle, which is taking a deeper zone in. What vehicle is it? Where are they preempting? Why are they preempting it in the first place? And that's really key and critical at the end of the day, because we all have to report to someone, and someone's got a lot of questions for us. And this is your biggest defense now. So why we've made the changes based on our community, because whether it's the public or an elected official, you've got that power. And so to reiterate on this even more, because emergency services has got the privilege to get an instantaneous screen, but snowplows and buses do not. And this is where the combination of artificial intelligence plus our existing infrastructure in the cloud come into a beautiful combination of optimizing signal time, because we can't instantaneously change to green lights. We have to figure out how to prescribe a treatment that conditions that signal to get that green light. And these are keywords right there that I'm dropping in, because that's what digital infrastructure helps us do, is change from a paradigm of reacting to what's already happening to knowing and prescribing a treatment. Because I love this, right? We all live in traffic. We call it congestion. Congestion's a sickness. Let's start prescribing treatments to what's happening. So real deep dive here just into out of the block diagram and looking at the reality, which is the reason why all this can work and work pretty quickly out of the box is, again, because there's already a number of onboard devices in buses, light rail, paratransit, snowplows, police, ambulance, that are capable of providing almost instantaneous location data and insights to the cloud. Working with traffic partners to secure their connectivity to the cloud, to their traffic control, allows for preemption, allows for priority, allows for time of arrival based priority to now make it straight to that controller with almost nearly no latency. We could spend a whole nother meeting on just how we've advanced taking latency out of these systems to achieve a real-time cloud system with under 1 second vehicle to controller, which is huge. But you're gonna have to wait for another day on that one. Because coming back to the high level here is that transit is so well positioned, and our emergency services, because they already have fleet tracking and operation centers, that the whole US, all the buses are available. 90,000 connected buses right now. It's amazing. And we're working with as many of those as possible right now. Light is up to 30,000 connected buses. And somehow, shape, or form have moved that to near real time with updates from them somewhere between 1 and 5 seconds. And most of those vehicles got connected in a couple of emails. And that's super powerful because what that then allows, as you see here, switching back to TriMet now for buses, is that an entire fleet can come on immediately, which now means that buses are in traffic. We can derive traffic insights. We can bring the traffic lights in. Machine learning is learning the traffic, the patterns of bus usage, the environment of the road, and turning that into an estimated time of arrival that we can send to a traffic light that you're seeing here, sometimes up to 3 seconds out, 150 seconds in advance, that is giving enough roadside knowledge to make optimized changes. And when you have that type of information in real time, you can then analyze. So what you measure, you can take and change. So there's an entire portal that we've been able to develop for transit for all the specific insights now on how transit signal priority is really working so that operations and planning can get back together. And so now to really dig back into the power of what artificial intelligence and machine learning is bringing here is that we can firsthand look at what intersections are still the most offensive, meaning that they're not bringing reductions in signal delay that we want, target those, and how this system maintains its level of calibration, because you don't have to go do a true traffic collection study anymore. Machine learning is always using 2 whole months of historical bus data to retrain every weekend. And so you have this sliding weekend through all the seasons. And what that winds up resulting in is you have a system that is now staying infinitely calibrated. And because it's really hard to show 1 whole year and bullets on one chart, you're just going to have to see a couple months. And you can see here that before the technology was turned on to afterwards, there's a significant change. Time at traffic lights went down by almost 80%, a little over. That means green lights for buses were right up. I hope that all of you can get to Portland to ride the FX2 line, because it's extremely impressive to ride a bus that only stops at bus stops. And that's one of the major takeaways. And because of digital infrastructure, and because of having full fleet connectivity, because of not having anything proprietary, and doing a project that had everything brand new at once, Adrian can attest to this, is that unfortunately there was a recall on their big green buses that they had to take off. They had to put their original 40-foot fleet back on. And had they used any other solution that was completely hardware, they would not have been able to have transit signal priority. And until they told us that they switched fleets, the system had automatically transferred to their 40-foot or 60-foot with ease, because everything is actually looking at what buses are attached to what route and are they eligible for TSP transit signal priority. And that's a huge takeaway, that there's the ability for software to bring way new creativity, take sensor data and work with it in a totally new way, to where the automatic transactions we want to see, like with snowplows, If it's snowing, enable the fleet for priority. If it's not snowing, don't give them priority. These are the types of sensor data that is very hard to get independently, but now can be brought all into a single window and provides everybody with the power now to make the changes we need daily, because the roads should be able to live and breathe now just as we do. So with that, I defer to Miles. Thank you, guys.
Actually, if I could, Miles, before you dive in, there's a couple questions that I want to hit here. The first one, I want to acknowledge that that Opticom was brought up earlier as the first generation solution for TriMet, and has been the market dominating Opticom GTT system for both fire preemption and transit signal priority across the country. They had already begun migrating to more of a cloud-based cellular architecture and approach before their acquisition from MyoVision, who has continued to put more investment in there. So there's no, it was not intentional to imply that that Opticom and now the MyoVision product was locked into that first generation technology. So I apologize for that, and just want to acknowledge that. There's actually a handful of competitive vendors competing with Light in this market space. So this is not a Light advertisement, nor are they the only players in this game. So thank you for bringing that up. Another
Can I just
question.
add one thing, Adrian?
Yep.
I just, it's a perfect and valid point. I just like to put it out there that we actually have a lot of respect for Opticom, and the reason why we call it out by name is because it literally meant optical communication. And a lot of cities still have this, and it's been the standard for 60 years. So yes, GPS and other stuff has come up, but just want to give credit where credit would due is we would not be able to operate without the original Opticom 3M solution.
Thank you. And take a look, Tim, at the Q&A that's been popping up. There's at least one that's directed at you. I want to talk just very briefly now, and then save the bulk of it for the group Q&A around standards. So we put in there's a very valid point that's being asked here. A lot of agencies are concerned about cell networks, and the AT&T outage the other day certainly did not do anything to dissuade people from concerns about cell carriers. Again, I'm not the finger like pointing at a single vendor. All of the cell carriers have their own challenges there. There's been cloud security breaches, so there's a lot of valid concern around these. We did put in the RFP that Light responded to, and that the rest of the industry did, to make best use of existing standards where they exist. NTC IP 1211, a dated standard, but the standard for traffic signals was one of them. We also then had to come back in, and we'll cover this a little bit more in Q&A, around how we addressed cybersecurity and some of the other issues there. And then before we go over to Miles, Tim, if you can do like a very, very brief answer to the first question, which is the similarities and differences between TSP and EVP. You covered both in your presentation. Obviously, in the case of transit, we've got fixed routes that we know that we're looking at, and we know the known upcoming signals. We know their schedule, and we know when they are running ahead of time. So there's a couple of those factors. But what's your as succinct as possible answer to the similarities and differences there?
So depending on which traffic controller you have, the reality is transit signal priority originally started as an offshoot of preemption, and was actually would toggle low priority preemption channels. And with the NTC IP 1211 and with the SAE connected vehicles message set, what came out of there was the signal control and prioritization standard. And so nowadays, in recent traffic controllers, you'll actually see a big difference between the two systems. But functionally, these are two different logic mechanisms to prioritize a vehicle with Preemption being the most aggressive way to immediately change a light to green.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, let's go ahead and shift now. Miles, why don't you tell us why we're doing this in the first place? We geeked out for quite a while now on how we're doing it and the neat technology. Why is TriMet interested? What have you found so far?
So yeah, so I'm here to talk about evaluating FX, the first year of performance after we installed the light system. So FX is our first express bus service that we have here in Portland. We rolled it out in the fall of 2023 and 2022, I'm sorry. And so far we've seen very good performance. There we go. All right. So division 1 year after, I'll be talking about 3 areas that we saw very positive benefits from using the light system. The first was an increase in ridership. The second was faster travel time through congestion. And the last is that there was less variability between travel time. And just for clarification, our green buses are back in service. They were out of service temporarily. And you are correct, because I did confirm we were introducing 40-foot and 60-foot buses into the route. And with the light system, there was no issues whatsoever with the difference between this. And we actually looked at service performance between 40 and 60-foot vehicles. It's not included here, but I just wanted to confirm that. So one of the things we did observe is that after this route went into service in September of 2022, we saw about a 40% increase in ridership compared to the previous year. And so what that looked like, our average daily ridership, so August was the last month that we operated Line 2 service. When we switched over, we immediately saw an increase in ridership. The FX2 is a unique route in that it connects not only Portland State, which is downtown Portland, but it also connects Community College right at 82nd Avenue, if you're familiar with Portland, and it goes all the way out to Gresham Transit Center, which is near Mount Hood Community College. And so it connects 3 educational institutions along this route. And so this ridership likely reflects people having increased accessibility to those particular destinations. We also, compared to the rest of the system, we also noticed that there was a huge change in ridership growth compared to the rest of the fleet. And so just this corridor alone, we've actually seen that because of the increased performance, more people are actually gravitating towards using this service. Through here, we've also observed faster travel time. So if we look at the 3 main segments of the route, so in the past, from inner Southeast Portland, you're saving about 3 minutes. In outer Southeast Portland, you're saving about 4 minutes. And then out to Gresham, you're saving about 2 minutes. Inner East Side Portland, just for some context, is heavily residential. 1-lane road both ways. I guess you call it a 2-lane road. Sorry, I'm an analyst, not a traffic person. 2-lane road. Outer Southeast Portland, larger, I believe it's a 4-lane road with a center median. And then going out to Gresham, it transitions from kind of light residential into an actual suburban city center. We also saw less variability in travel times. And so for those people using the service in outer Southeast Portland and outer Gresham, they saw about a minute savings and up to a 2-minute savings out in Gresham. And so not only were the trips faster, but from trip to trip, people were actually saving time. And I'll give a shout out to my staff, Catherine Keeling and Ben Mason, who did this analysis for our performance.
Great, thanks, Miles. We'll come back to you in Q&A here in a little bit too, and dig a little deeper on some of these things. Aaron, we've let you off the hook so far, not having presentation, but please put your hat on representing all of your traffic signal clients now and say, you know, all of that is great and exciting. Here's some of the challenges that my clients have talked to me about when vendors and solution and transit partners and emergency preemption, everybody else is coming to us with these kinds of technologies that they want to run on our network. What challenges have you seen? And then maybe as you go through some of that, I think you've seen the questions here around standards and some of the very types of concerns that I think you've heard from those clients. Maybe start to touch on those as well.
Well, thanks, Adrian. So yeah, I do work with traffic signal operations agencies, some of whom are here today. Um, and our focus is on the operations on the street, and a lot of the Q&A questions were related to that. So what happens on the street is 99% of that, it resides in firmware, and people, and we've said today, oh, it's what happens at the controller. What happens at the controller is based on the software on the controller. And we really are focused on the capability of that firmware, which includes, how does it respond to a preamp? Can I skip phases? How do I return to coordination? What's the changes there that happen before I go back in? So that firmware capability has been a major challenge. The second challenge we're finding is with the comm networks themselves, including layering on cybersecurity, and how we plug or punch holes in our network and establish firewalls with those holes to ensure we still have a secure network. There are issues with latency and the speed of the data transmission, because your signals need a lot of data and really quick to manage traffic. I mean, half a second is a long time in a signal controller. The other bit is how multimodal the firmware is. Does it respond the same to PEDs and bikes and transit? And how does it balance those needs in your firmware? So I know we're short on time, so I'm going to truncate a little bit. I did know that there was a question about standards. And so the standards that were noted in the Q&A are highly relevant. Again, though, the FedRAMP for cloud security is met by all the major commercial providers because they sell to the federal government. SOC 2 is highly relevant. Even though it was written for banking, it does have some great PII protections and other bits of security. And the ISO 27001, it's really about process certification, saying, do you have systems in place? Do you maintain and monitor those? So what it doesn't do is say, what should you do to, what applications should you use, or what should those applications do to secure your network? But so again, it comes down to individual networks and how they're managed. So I'm going to move on from that. So keep going.
Okay, well, one piece I want to elaborate on that, our traffic agencies here were extremely concerned, as you would suspect, with communications directly to their traffic controller. And so they wanted this addressed, brought up the issue and concern to Light, and Light sort of re-architected their network slightly to put a firewall between their device on the network and the controllers that wasn't really doing necessarily full-on firewall protection as we think about virus protection and those sorts of things. But what it was a message gateway. So we used NTCP 1211 to be compliant with industry standards and to future-proof our network for the connected vehicle future. But the standard has all kinds of different messages that can be sent through it. By nature, it wanted to be somewhat flexible. So we actually used that gateway to limit the messages that could be sent to the controller down to a small subset, and keep any of the nefarious actors out that might want to turn the signals to flash or do something else like that. They can only basically tell the signal an estimated time of when a bus is going to be there. And that was heavily tested by PBOT and ODOT and the Light solution. It also allows us to kind of open up that gateway slowly as we add in emergency preemption and other types of message sets that might come through there. We'll identify the new messages and test and roll them out. So yeah, we'll call that one answered for now, because we do have a lot more to get through. Interoperability with various priority and preemption solutions from different vendors on the same network. Aaron, do you want to take a first cut at this, again, wearing that hat that you wear for them?
I'm wearing a hat. Okay, so in general, we can operate more than one preamp/priority system, as long as it's not like hardwired right in, because each system will just give the controller firmware the request for preempt or priority. So the key there is how does my firmware broker those requests, right? So you've got two competing TSP requests coming in. How does it broker those? That's the question that's handled locally at the controller. I don't know. Tim, do you have a little bit more to say there?
Have you speak about interoperability? I mean,
And having
that's
multiple systems, like I think they were looking
Yep.
at your with different agencies. Well, what if one still has Opticom or whatever infrared?
yes. So with time here, a couple very pointed things. NTCIP was built for the communication of multiple systems. The SAE message set was also built for multiple systems. There's a lot out there built for this. The traffic controllers can do a lot. There's many examples of this. I mean, there are cities and communities that run multiple ATMS systems. This is all built for there. Secondly, just to even come back to other preemption priority systems, this works in concert with, there's a question here that asked about railroad preemption. Light is able to collect if it's railroad preemption. We're able to collect if it's other vehicles. In fact, even on the division street that we're talking about here, there is Opticom. It's used by the emergency responders. There is a light rail crossing. There is a heavy rail crossing. We see it all. We see it all in that one window. And we've also helped TriMet do some very interesting things to identify heavy rail and kick off automated rerouting for that route when heavy freight's detected. So interoperability is very important, which is why to the controller and why to evangelize standards, because every brand was made for a little something different. Every intersection is completely different than the other one next to it. And everybody needs to have their freedom to not be locked in to any ecosystem.
Okay, we have more questions and we're going to have time. So some of us have been sort of chipping away and answering a few in writing and trying to pick off the easy ones. I'm going to jump down to one around safety impacts. This is not funny, haha, but there is kind of a funny analogy here. In one of the pictures of the corridor, and I didn't zoom in on the traffic controllers, but we had a specific controller head that's used for the bus rail fleet the bus fleet that we've ported over from the rail world, which uses bars to tell the bus driver when they can go and use essentially a queue jump type functionality there. When the system first went live, TriMet was getting all kinds of calls and complaints that bus drivers were running red lights. They were getting their signal that it was okay for them to go, but we hadn't done any effort to communicate to the general public that this particular technology was going live and that it had this specific element. We did answer those questions, did a bit of a press campaign around it. The broader question that's being asked here is when people get used to intersection signal phase and timing, and say usually when a left turn is done and it turns red, I get my green, and am I just going to go naturally because I've been commuting on this path forever? We, by state law in Oregon, can't skip phases with TSP, and so it didn't really change the order of those things. Light and worked very closely with PBOT, who then inserted a bunch of different TSP opportunities within the existing signal phase and timing, but didn't drastically change them. So we haven't really had any safety impacts, at least here at TriMet. I'm not sure. The question about AI in signal timing, boy, I wish we had another 15 minutes because this one is fascinating to me. If you want to reach out to ITS America and get connected with me, Tim and I could set up a little follow-up, and I know everyone's gonna say, well, shoot, why do they get it and we don't? Let us know if you're interested in some more detail about AI. We'll do our best to follow up and provide written answers to the rest of the questions. I think we're timed out here Want to thank everybody for joining. Oh, shoot, we forgot to ask our series poll. So if you could jump on here real quick, anyone who can stick around for an extra minute. Did today's webinar help you understand digital infrastructure better using this particular use case example? And in the meantime, we will work outside of this meeting to answer the rest of the questions and have ITS America share those. So Victoria, if we want to go back to you, A, if we've got any results to the poll, and B, for anything you want to do to close us out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for attending the webinar. Our next webinar series for the DI webinar series will be happening in May. We'll be skipping April because of the annual conference and expo. But there will be various events around DI at that annual conference and expo, so feel free to go check that out on our website. And with that, we will end today's webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. That's that I like ending with that poll response. So we moved the bar a little bit, which is what we were hoping to do, and didn't have too many people with more questions after today than coming in. So thanks, everybody.